come here again. So yeah, I'm the CEO and co-founder of QuickSave, and we develop games explicitly and only for chat applications. That's, as Anna-Kaisa said, that's a very new area. It's still in development. So after this talk, you will be on the cutting edge of where game development is going right now. And I will tell first a little bit about my own background. So after studying here, I went straight into game industry. I was first working at Digital Chocolate, and then in 2010, we founded our first own startup. Tribe Studios was already doing kind of social multiplayer games, but that was on a PC and Mac platform. We were always kind of thinking on how do we get our games to mobile, because mobile was kind of already the thing, the place to be. But our games were such that you had to type, like you had to have discussions with others. And we were thinking that having a standalone mobile game where you have to type a lot was not going to fly. And I still think it would have been a bad idea. But then at the end of 2014, we realized that the chat applications had arrived, and everyone was chatting away on their mobiles. So we started to approach different chat apps, like how they would publish our game. Like we would like to make a game that was played inside their application, not as a side app, but inside the chat. And I must say that all the chat apps that we contacted were interested, so we started to make a demo towards that, like a game of how it would look inside the chat. But then we found Palringo. Palringo is a British group chat application, not very well known in Finland, but it has a nice user base in other geographical areas. And Palringo was already making like half of their revenues through bots and game bots. So they were quite interested in the area, and they acquired Tribe Studios. So we became their like studio in Finland. And we were developing and leading the kind of chat games development inside Palringo. We made over 10 kind of bot games and chat games, and they made nice revenues. So we had nice experience there from the area. Then in the beginning of this year, we realized that this whole chat game market had really been opening up, and there had been a lot of things happening. Facebook Messenger had already kind of started their instant games beta at the end of 2016. So we realized that this is a moment to start a new startup, and three of us who were already founding Tribe Studios as well, that three of us, we started to start a new company called QuickSave. Here's some of the titles I've been involved with. So Aalto game, Velvet Sundown were Tribe Studios titles. Then on Palringo we made lots of games, but for example we made Teamwork Maze, where you kind of as a group you direct this little maze character to the treasure, or this little coast through the maze for the treasure. And then there was Undercover Assassin, which is kind of hidden identity game. If you've ever played Mafia, where you have like the villagers and then you have the Mafia people, and then either side kind of wins, tries to outnumber the other one. So here you had an assassin, you had a president, and you had bodyguards who were trying to protect the president. So this was all very integrated into the chat. And while we were at Palringo, they kind of rolled out their own HTML5 component for the chat. So you have this kind of graphical component where you have buttons and you can do gameplay. And that really opens up possibilities. You can do games with pure bots as well. Like if you have a bot in a chat group and you talk to it and it talks back to you, there are some gameplay you can do with that, but it's very limited. Like Facebook in the beginning, they had this chess game, and making a chess move, you had to like type the letters and numbers and be very precise in your commands. And that's very, it's not very usable for most players. It's like command line prompts that you are playing with. So when you get these graphical components, it really opens up like a multitude of different things you can start doing inside there. And right now we are working on Best and Better. That's not soft launched yet. We are not very far, but it's still work in development. But I will talk a bit more about Best and Better as well at the end. That's coming for Facebook Messenger. Okay, so the general outline of the talk. First, I will look at some of the kind of business side numbers on where this messaging is as a platform. Then I will go through the different chat apps that are possible to have games in them. Then the third is probably one of the most interesting sections. I mean, we'll go into the chat game-specific game design and chat game-specific question, like what's different when you do a chat game versus you do a game for App Store. And then the last part is also quite interesting. We go like a deep dive into the games. We will go through many examples. Like I've picked some that I like as games, and we discuss them based on like what kind of designs they have and what's good in them regarding the platform. And if at any point you have questions, you can raise your hand and ask for something that if you don't get something, or then also in the end we can have a little Q&A. Some of the questions that I was sent before this talk I have addressed, or I have actually listed them here, so we can also look at those when they come here. All right, let's start with the numbers. Generally, the market for chat apps has been growing quite rapidly. Like if you think 2011, they were like a very small thing, and now it's like they have actually surpassed the kind of traditional social networks. And traditional social networks is here like those Facebook, LinkedIn, and then the chat apps are WhatsApp, Messenger, WeChat. And they've been growing more rapidly, and they've already surpassed the traditional ones, which means there are a lot of users in chat apps. I'm sure you all most likely have at least one of them in your phone, most likely even several. Facebook Messenger alone has more than 1.3 billion monthly active users, and that's a huge user number. It means that the games that you put inside Messenger can also grow to big user numbers. And this is crucial when you are considering like new gaming platforms. If we compare, for example, VR, virtual reality, as a gaming platform, like HTC and Oculus, they haven't yet even announced how many devices they've sold, which means that they haven't sold all that much. And that means that if you make a game for that platform, the game can only grow as big as the platform is. But here, with this many users, it's a really good place to have games in there. Okay, one more graph around the monetization. So these are studies about online entertainment. The first one is from China, and it's kind of by sector, like what is the biggest monetizing sector on online entertainment? And surprise, it's games. The second one is from US. Again, games is the biggest monetizing sector in online entertainment. So kind of looking at these trends, like looking at how big chat apps have been growing and how they are still growing, and then thinking that games are what monetizes well, it's kind of makes a lot of sense that companies are starting to put these two together. The platforms. Okay. So I will kind of introduce these 4 chat applications. These are the ones that currently offer games inside the application. I'm pretty sure there will be still others to follow. At least in Asia, there's Line and Kakao that have been kind of branding themselves very strongly with games and for gamers. But right now, what I see with them, they are offering kind of these kind of companion games that you have to download. And there might be some perks in those games, like you can talk about the game in the chat, or once you are in the chat, you can kind of discover the games from there and go to the game straight. But they are still 2 different applications. But these 6 platforms offer games inside the app as well. Facebook Messenger, instant games, this is the biggest. And they have fully integrated HTML5 games, which are always full screen and portrait orientation. That's a bit different from App Store already. You can't do landscape. It's always a portrait. Then there's 2 points that are very important from the game developer's perspective, what Facebook Messenger is doing very well. So firstly, the games can send customized messages to chat. And there's a lot of freedom for the developer to decide what kind of messages and when and how many, even to an extent how many as well. So that's very good kind of a freedom to have, that you can design that. Then the other point is that you can easily switch contexts between groups and friends. What that means in practice is that if you go to the game and you decide to play, let's say, Words with Friends with Laura, and then you are playing it with Laura, and then you are thinking, oh, well, what if I would play also with Svatti? And then you can, inside the game, without leaving the game, without going back to the chat and changing the group, you can already, inside the game, you can switch these groups. And that's, of course, for the game, also for the player, but for the game developer as well. These are very useful features to have. It means that the integration between the game and the chat is quite strong. And you can, inside the game, you can kind of recognize where you are playing and with who you are playing. The monetization is being rolled out. It was announced like less than 2 weeks ago, maybe, or 2 weeks ago, how the monetization works. So it's going to be video ads. Actually, there are already video ads in some of the games, as some of you have seen, based on the questions that I got. So there's video ads, and also Facebook has announced kind of in-app purchases in Google Play. So that's how it's now starting. And that's a big step, because that's something that has been missing. Like when we started to develop chat games, some people were questioning, like, oh, but there's not even monetization. Why would a company do chat games? And we were trusting that it'll be there, and it is now. It is now there. But this also kind of like is an example of how new this area is, that there are these new kind of announcements and developments all the time. Kik is another quite interesting platform for gamebots. And they have also good discovery. There's a bit, on the first image it's a bit fuzzy, but the last menu item is Discover Bots. So from the main menu, there's only 5 items, and one of them is Discover Bots. So it's easy to find them. And games can create these buttons that help. That's already a lot better than having like some command line action to type. You can have buttons, but you can also load HTML5 pages. So there's quite a bit of flexibility in how to do games in Kik. The monetization here also has been kind of a, let's see what happens. But now they've done, like just a couple of weeks ago, also they finished like a initial coin offering with a coin called Kin, which they say is a decentralized ecosystem of digital services for daily life. So there's still a bit of uncertainty how this works in practice. We're kind of waiting for the big announcements to come when we will see it first time in action. But I would assume this is going to be very much related in how the games will monetize and how there will be kind of value exchanged between the players, the companies, and everyone in the ecosystem. Then there's vContact, which is the biggest messaging app in Russia, and they announced this August that they have also a direct games platform, which is an HTML5 games launched from the app. They have a monetization already. It's through vContact points that you can buy with money, and you can spend the coins inside the games as well. But right now the whole platform is only available on Android. So we'll see what happens with the iOS side. But it's definitely a very interesting place also to have the games. Then there's WeChat, which is the biggest in China. For a Western game developer, it's a bit difficult market to research. If you don't know Chinese, it's hard to find information or even find the games. Because how you find the games is you actually go and you search them, like you would search for a friend. So you kind of start to type the name of the game, and then they will appear. You can kind of like or follow the games. You can play them. They are HTML5 games that open up. And you can share the game to a friend. But I didn't see very strong connection between the kind of the groups or the people and the games. As I was explaining, the Facebook Messenger link is quite strong, and you can really tie the game to the chat activities. But here I didn't see such a strong link there. Okay, then there's iMessage, which is available obviously only on iOS. So iPhone or iPad users can access the iMessage app. Well, actually, it's the text messaging app on iOS. Here the games are usually native iOS games, so technically it's different. Where the others are using HTML5 or their own bot APIs, here it's usually native, and you also download the app on the side. So it's a bit different in that sense as well. You kind of you find the game from the iMessage, and you play the game inside iMessage, but on the background you still get an app on your phone as well. But payments are handled, it's the same as in an in-app store. So you have both premium games and in-game purchases available. Of course, the limitation here for the developers' point of view is that you would only have the iOS audience in use. Then, last but not least, there's Telegram. There's also HTML5 games played via a bot. Here the discovery is a bit difficult. There's no like a menu item where you could discover games. You have to search for them. There are a couple of these game bots that are kind of actually a collection of games, like this bot called GameBot will show you several games, but then there are others that are not linked to these gallery bots. So what you can do is actually just Google like Telegram bots recommendations or something, and then you will find it, and then you will find the bot. And Telegram has been run almost like a non-commercial product until very lately. I mean, lately they've started to announce certain payments there as well. Recently there came these bot payments, which actually just means that like if you order a pizza via a Telegram bot, you can pay the pizza inside the bot, and then there's like a money transfer happening. Of course, that kind of payment is not suitable for game use, but it's interesting to see. I mean, how that will develop here as well. Technical capabilities of building games here are already quite good. All right. So, what are the unique aspects of the chat games? There's 4 main points that we'll go through. Well, first of all, this is kind of self-evident, obvious, but it's a natural multiplayer environment. Even though I feel it's obvious, there's actually a lot of games in, for example, Facebook Messenger now that don't use this much. They're almost like single-player games inside the chat, which on my point of view is not the optimal scenario, because if you have all your friends there, why not play with them as well? And like these chat games, they can work in any type of multiplayer. It can be turn-based one-on-one. It can be synchronous multiplayer. Yeah, you're there at the same time. It can be asynchronous multiplayer. I don't think I've seen anything kind of fully synchronous yet, and of course there will be some technical limits, so that I don't think any like esports games will come to chat anytime soon. I mean, there are some game types that will be staying in the App Store, quite certainly. But you can do lots around the multiplayer, and here the chat group kind of functions as the game lobby. And when you are developing multiplayer games, there's often you have to tackle this empty lobby syndrome, which means that if you build a game to App Store and it's a multiplayer game, it has a game lobby. So basically, players come to the lobby, and when there's enough players, they go and they play the game. But if you need some critical mass to start the game, what happens with the empty lobby syndrome is that somebody comes in, sees that there's no one there, they stay 5 seconds and they go. 5 seconds later, somebody else comes in, and there's nobody in the lobby, I can't play this game, so they go out. So you need quite a big critical mass to actually run a successful multiplayer game, especially if you want to have them, if you need to have them synchronously there. So the chat environment can help for this. In chat, you already have big active groups of people chatting together, and it's possible to kind of utilize those already existing spaces as the lobby, where you then launch the game from. Kind of relating factor is the instant glance system, as I call it. So if you think of the games like Clash of Clans. How it goes is that first you download and install the game from the App Store, then you play the game, then you find a nice clan, you join the clan, and then you start chatting with the clan. And this is a very crucial point for the game, because this is where the main retention comes. When you are part of a clan, you don't want to let down your friends. You need to go back to help them. You might get some message, oh, we need you, or you just remember, yeah, I have to help them. So it's very important to get the player into this space where they start to chat and form relationship and meet each other. So in the chat apps, this is kind of reversed. You start with having your chat and having your clans and your friends there. And then from there, you go to play the game. And of course, after playing the game, you can go back to the chat, and then you can go to play the game, play the game some more. So this is a very different dynamic as an environment, and you should kind of consider these differences when you are designing the games, like how to best utilize this. What kind of a game would benefit from this, having the clan around there from the beginning? Then what's a crucial feature that the games have to consider is the easy access. So this is very good for the user as well. Like, there's no download. You don't have to kind of clutter your phone anymore, but you can just go and play the game instantly. There's also no uninstall. So when you are fed up with the game, there's nothing you have to remove from the phone, which is good for the developer as well, because maybe the player still finds your game and comes back later. And you have to also consider this fast start, because if the players are not very invested when they start, they have to get the game instantly. If you compare to like a PC game that you go and maybe you download it, you install it, maybe you download some patches, it might take you half an hour, maybe more even, to even get to the game. So you've already invested a lot of time for the game. So you will give the game some time. You will give it at least like that half an hour, maybe an hour, before you decide that, oh, this is actually not a good game. It's not for me. But here, if you get into the game in seconds, you may only have seconds to impress the player. So very quickly, you have to be able to play and understand what's the main thing about the game. And hopefully in the first game session, you can also give some glimpse of the things to come. So, okay, that was nice, but there's more to come. There's something that you can grow with this game, and you can really have benefits from the game coming back to it, that you didn't see everything. Okay. Then one point about the chat games is, of course, the built-in notifications. And this is a very important part to consider on how to define these and design the messaging. There were some worries in the questions about the spamminess of the games, and that's something that the developer has to be able to acknowledge and work around as well, so that the messages are such that the people actually want to receive the messages and they want to share them. But this definitely gives the games big opportunities for attention and virality. Not many players allow the game apps to send them push notifications. A lot of time people disallow that from the games, but everyone kind of allows the messaging apps to send them push notifications. So that's not something you would stop. Of course, if you have certain groups where you play most, you tend to end up muting those groups, because you don't want to have everything from the game groups like popping up on the notification screen on your phone. But even then, even if you mute the groups where you are playing, you would still go into the chat app in question, like daily, perhaps many times a day, and then when you go there, then you see those little numbers there. Oh, there's something happening in this game, so you remember the game, and you kind of, if you like it, you are likely to go back to it. So in that sense, this is very important part of the game design on how does it integrate into the chat and how does it bring value. Like, how we want to see the games is that the games need to kind of enhance the communication. They shouldn't hamper the communication, but they should be making the communication go to a new level and make it even better. And that's a challenge on the messages, on how to design them in the way that they are actually good for the communication that's otherwise happening there as well. So, what I often hear about the chat games is that they are kind of mini games, and I kind of cringe at that. Mini games, they don't have to be so mini. All games nowadays are services, and kind of users or players of any games have used to now to a quite high service level, so that the games need to update, they need to feel fresh, and they have to be constantly something new. And this is kind of a bar that there's no reason that chat games should go under that bar. Like, if it's HTML5 web games, it's actually technically even easier to update them. Like, you don't have to go through any Apple process or anything, because you're in control of a lot of the things inside the game quite easily. So you have to keep in mind to make updates for the game as well. Also, what comes to kind of the metagame and the depth required, I mean, right now, because it's a new area, there's not so much games competing of the space. This is the requirement right now, might not be on the bar of the App Store, but eventually it will be there. So as the developers, we want to be there where the where the competition will anyways be quite soon. So so you have to have something in the game that makes it more deep in the gameplay. So it's just kind of a different platform. After you adapt to the new ecosystem, there's benefits for games for being there, but you still have to work to build the game. And it's best even if you can design the game or think of the platform already when you are designing the game. All right. So let's go to some game examples. I will be getting the questions here as well. So we start with Facebook Messenger. The first game I pick from Facebook Messenger is the basketball game. A lot of people know this, and a lot of people have played this. There's probably multiple reasons. But often when I talk about like Messenger games, people go like, "Oh, there's the basketball game." And one reason might be that they might remember this game, but they also might remember the game that Facebook Messenger had as a bot in the very early days. Last year sometime there was already a bot where if you put this basketball emoji to your conversation, pressing that emoji would start this simple basketball game where you put these balls in the basket. I don't know if any one of you remembers that, but that was one of the very first bot games there. And so some people might still remember that when they talk about, oh, there was the basketball game, yeah. Well, this is newer. This is made for the Instant Games platform. But it's also that the basic idea is very simple. So you just flip with your finger and off goes the ball and hopefully into the basket. So how these guys are utilizing the platform? Obviously, they have some, they are benefiting from the easy access and the discoverability, first of all, because it's there, there's no download for it. They are using a limited version of the multiplayer features. They have the leaderboard. Basically, it's a score-based. You can challenge your friends to beat your score. And then they are using the messaging. So when you play the game, whoever you decide to play with will get a message saying that, hey, here's a high score. Try to beat me. So it's kind of like this is close to the kind of mini game level on having a game there, but it's tied to the platform. It has those features, and it is pretty much played. I guess it's easy to show out if you want to show quickly something game. So next example I have here is the 8-ball pool. This is like 1 versus 1. Turn-based game. So when you start a game, you have to choose the opponent again, and then you make your strike or your shot, and then it sends the shot to the other player, telling them that it's their turn. And then you have your active games there, and you have to wait. From the individual's point of view, there's a fair amount of waiting involved in here, because you always have to wait for the other person to finish. Or you can go and start a new game, and that's a context switch. So that's like you're going to another group, you're going to another user, and you can have several active games going. So this kind of game is good match for the platform, especially for kind of one-on-one conversations. So if you are using the chat mainly to discuss with one person at a time, then this kind of games are good. I mean, it's something that you can do with that one friend. If you are playing this game in a group where you have a lot of people, it might be boring for the others to see those game messages without them being able to participate, because it's only up to 2 people at a time. So the third example, we go to the more scalable multiplayers. So you can have up to any amount of players in the same group. So this is Everwing, because this was in the kind of pre-assignment this time, so many of you have played it as well. Maybe somebody had played it even if there wasn't the assignment. I think it's most likely the most played game right now in Facebook Messenger. And if you start and you are like just like level 2, level 3 character, you don't see all these sections in the menu yet. But it has quite a lot of content once you play it further. The main gameplay is very simple. So you have this fairy that you are moving from left to right and trying to kind of get all those little creatures killed that are flying towards you. It's an old mechanic. It's been in a lot of sci-fi shooter games. And then you get these bosses that are a little harder to beat. And what you are aiming at is you are aiming at collecting these coins, and the coins at the same time are also your score. And you also get trophies and some other perks, and yeah. And what they are doing also, as I was saying about the updating the content and keeping it fresh, well, events is something that is also starting to be kind of standard in game development. So Everwing has these events where you have a limited time to get the certain results, and then you will get like additional super perks for you or for your group. Then there's quests. So when you unlock more fairies and you collect more dragons, you can send your extra fairies and your extra dragons on quests, which takes some time. The dragons will level up, and you will get some perks at the end of it. Then there's a collection of dragons, which is pretty clever. You can get more dragon eggs by purchasing with money or trophies. And once you have two of the same dragons on level 10, you can combine them and you can evolve them so they become bigger dragons. And then when you have 2 of those at the level 20, you can then combine them. As far as I know, 30 is currently the highest level for a dragon to evolve to, but that already requires a fair amount of dragons of the same breed to get to that. So there's this nice, almost like a Pokemon-style collection of those dragons. Then the kind of last and maybe the most important feature in Everwing is where the multiplayer really comes out. And this is already a feature that has been kind of copied or used in some other instant games as well, is the group bosses. So every chat or every group where you are playing has its own kind of boss fights going on. So here you can see that I've already done like 20% of damage to this boss, and then it will in fact send that message to the chat once I finish that 80% left. Please come and help. So these bosses basically, they have so much health points that it's very difficult to kill them alone. And if other players come to fight it at the same time, you don't see the fairies flying there simultaneously, but you will see like their scores appearing on the leaderboard, and you will see their kind of percentages starting to grow when they are fighting. And once you defeat a monster, you get loot, extra prizes, maybe some rare dragons, and then you get a next level of boss, so they start to get more difficult. And then there's some kind of time remaining once they will kind of start from the level 1 boss. So this is like a group activity where it helps to have your friends there to help you out. Okay, a few more on Everring. So yes, the monetization is in Everring. Like here, free trophies. Watch a quick video ad, and you get some trophies. It's obviously using these group messages. Like if you play the game, you obviously automatically start a weekly tournament, or you participate if somebody has already started it. And then they also have a bot. That's an option that the games can do. So that the game can have kind of a companion bot that will tell the user, not the group, but the user, him or herself, who's been playing the game, on like what's happening, like if there's a treasure awaits, if a quest has been completed, or something like this. So the bots can also talk back to you. And yeah, here's the first set of questions. Let's see if I've already answered these or not. But the first set is specifically on Everring. So that's why I have this here. So the first one, Everring needed only one player. Game in a chat application brings to my mind a game that you play simultaneously with someone. Is the social aspect of the games just knowing some of your Facebook friends are playing and comparing your points to theirs? So a couple of points for this. Yes, I've already talked about it, but so Everring needing only one player, I think that's a good point for the game, that you don't have to have friends from the beginning. Because what we have noticed developing multiplayer games, that people don't like to recommend games before they've already played them. If you haven't seen anything of the game, it's like you feel embarrassed, like you don't know if it's a cool thing or not. Maybe it's a funny game, maybe you want to invite your friend to play it. But if there's nothing you can know, you are too scared to kind of risk your reputation and start sharing the game around. And yeah.
I have a question, because like to play the game, you usually need to send it to someone, but then you play it like a single player, so like you still need to send it to someone?
Yes, yeah. Oh, okay, yes. So there was a question that still in the beginning you have to choose the first contact to choose somebody to play with. Yes, usually you do. Actually, some of the games, if you start it from the top line games menu, don't require you to instantly choose it. Some of them you can play a little while, and then once you get to some multiplayer feature, then the game will prompt you, okay, who are you playing with? But most games, yes, ask it from the beginning. I guess that's a little virality trick. I mean, you at least expose it to one person. What I noticed some of you were doing as well is that you chose like your boyfriend or girlfriend or somebody very close friend to start with, so that you can explain to the person, like, I'm not trying, I don't know about this game, but I just wanted to try it and I had to share with someone. So yeah, there is usually the requirement at least one person needs to see your gameplay. Personally, I don't think that's very much required. I mean, I'm fine with playing at least somebody. Most of the games they also rely on some game messages going to chat. So if you don't give it any context, there's no chat it can send anything to. So if those messages are part of the game, then it kind of makes sense design-wise. Of course, it depends on the game messages, on how they are designed, whether they are kind of nice things to receive, like yeah. So, but whether the social aspect is only like the scores or not. So, as was evident from the examples just now, no, it can be something else than just the scores. Yeah. There's more about the spamminess later on as well. Could chat games actually be interactive with the friend you are supposedly chatting with? Could chat games not spam to the said friend annoyingly automatic updates on my game if I don't want to share? So yeah, there are also these share options inside the games, and I would say as a designer myself, or like game developer myself, that it should be limited on how much you automatically spam. Actually, there are limits from the platforms as well. So it's not like you are even the platforms want you to just like spam. Having that at least one context often makes kind of sense for the game. So that's probably something that the players who will be active playing in the chat will have to kind of learn to accept that there has to be at least one game buddy that you test the game kind of with on the chat. Replication. Somebody had noticed that the game Everwing is very close, very close to a game called Dragonflight. I haven't played Dragonflight myself, but I had heard this fact before. If I'm not mistaken, Dragonflight is actually a companion to Kakao Games in Korea, might be. Anyways, this is like a whole new topic. There could be a lecture from a lawyer here on like how does the plagiarism or copying. There's very little you can actively say, protect in games. Like you can have trademarks, which is like a name of the game. The logo of the game can be trademarked. Patents only work for technological solutions. So if there's something, for example, you are building a game engine or a game tool that has something clever that makes something so much better than what it used to be that it's patentable, then might be technology can be patented. But other than that, there's no like much really legal tools for this. And it does happen a lot. Like even if you consider like Clash of Clans, how many kind of clan type of games, it almost like created its own genre. So it's almost like, okay, this game was so popular, so good that it created a genre, and then there was a genre of copycats. Whether any of the kind of later comers to the genre made as well as Clash of Clans, I don't know, some of them probably made pretty well. So this is kind of a fact that you almost like have to in a way learn to accept and live with. In Finland, in our kind of game development culture, there is a lot of pride for the developers to bring something new to the game. Of course, it's smart also to take some features or some aspects of the game that work and use those. It's kind of how the games evolve. Somebody invents something and somebody takes pieces of it. So it's the whole ecosystem is kind of also evolving that way. But at least in Finland, usually people take pride on having their own thing as well in there. So why here? Why isn't there any story based on the game? Like why fairies and dragon goblins? Well, that's a question for Blackstorm. So yeah, actually somebody misunderstood this being our game. This is not our game. Everything is not done by us. So it's their design choice not to have a background story there. I don't know. They could. Why have the game on this platform? Well, I would assume that them having the top game on Facebook Messenger right now is not a bad thing for them. So it's definitely a good choice for them to have come there. To whom is this game made? What is the audience target? Well, as I mentioned, the Facebook Messenger has that 1.3 billion monthly active users, and that is such a huge number that it's actually pretty much anyone. You can even be inside that. You can target different age groups, or you can target different genders or geographical areas. I mean, there's so much variety in that number. What I hear is that it's quite obviously like it's the younger people who tend to play the games more in Messenger, as well as most likely in the App Store. So, but it's very similar to that. And I don't know what their original target audience was. I guess just Messenger users. Okay, that was for Facebook Messenger. Let's go to look at a couple of Kik pods. Okay, the first one is called Escape Coast Treasure Mansion. I believe. So basically, as you enter your uncle's spooky mansion, and you have choices. This is kind of like those choose your own adventure books, like where you can where you can select what you do next, and it jumps you somewhere. What was a nice mechanic in this game is that they had these puzzles, and you could try to reply to the puzzles by taking a photo of something. And like I had realized that the answer for this puzzle is clock. And I went around our house and I tried to take a picture of each clock in the house, but somehow I didn't get it right and it never recognized it. It didn't recognize anything in the picture, so I had to opt in for the type the answer option, and then I typed clock and it was correct. But I like the effort that they tried to make it relevant on what you actually see around you, and then you could play the game by taking photos. I kind of like that. And then, yeah, I did finally escape, and then it's kind of advertising other similar games there, like what else would you like to play? So this was not very multiplayer, but it's obviously it's integrated. It's using the messages very heavily because it's actually a discussion with the game as well, in addition to having the buttons there. Okay, the second Kickbot is a bit more multiplayer and a bit more varied in content. So zombie invasion. So the beginning is just, are you ready to adventure in zombie apocalypse? Of course, let's go, start. So also you have here these selections on where do you go, what you do. But you also get these kind of mini games in HTML5. So there are this, you can see it's kind of blurry on the black background, but you either direct yourself or a car, and you try not to hit the zombies that are coming down the street. So it's something that is part of the game, and then how well you do in the mini game will change the outcome of what happened with that part of the story. One mechanic that the game was using that I found quite funny in the beginning is that it made you wait. But if you think that you are in a chat app where you are having other chats going on, maybe you are playing many games, you can, and even like a lot of the App Store games, like they have these timers, you have to wait for something to be built or something. So here was their way to make a timer, like you have to wait. Somehow I got knocked out, I was unconscious, and it didn't tell me when I will wake up. You should know very soon. And I'm like, yeah. Be patient, be patient. I tried to say something to it, and you haven't woken up yet. And it was even giving me like different answer every time. I tried to I wanna do something, and it was just making me wait. Eventually, it was something like, okay, now you woke up. Oh, okay. There was a message from the bot. Now you are awake. Here's the kind of main menu. What you can do: you can travel, scavenge. There's missions. There's resting. And here there's also the multiplayer aspects that come along. For example, the missions. What I discovered is that if you go on a mission, you are actually helping some actual player. So sometimes I got a reply that there's no missions available right now, and there was other parts where I could kind of request help. For example, for traveling from one place to another. So assumably, then that would send a mission to someone else's phone to help this person. So this was a nice way to have some multiplayer activity there, because even though it's kind of on the background, you still realize that there are real other people there that you're kind of playing with. And there's a leaderboard. I haven't died yet. I don't know when I will. I guess I have to be careful on the over 700 days. There's something bad happening at 714 and higher. So everyone's dying there at least. Yeah, but there's a leaderboard on how long can you survive. But this game was, and I'm still playing it. It has quite nice surprises because it's different. Mini games and things happening that you can't foresee before they happen. So there's already some some multiplayer activities as well there, and it had those HTML5 elements, so it was a bit more variety in the gameplay. Okay, Telegram. So Telegram, if you remember, was one of those platforms where it was actually hard to find the bots. Like, I found this chat wars by Googling. I found this bot list where was some recommended Telegram bots. And so when I go to Telegram, I can type that CHTWRS, and probably at that point it's already suggesting to me, are you looking for this bot here? So here also the introduction is brief. Be ready to live in a castle, battle the neighboring rivals, and so forth. I'll go some of the most interesting features here. Although I have to pinpoint something interesting. The kind of language that they are using, or the type of person they make you be, is kind of interesting. Like, I went to my very first quest in a forest. I chose to go to the forest. I thought it was the simple thing to do. But then if you see what happened, it says that forest fairies were impressed by your poem and invited you to their hideout. They should not have done that. You took the chance and decided to kill them and claim their treasures. Poor fairies. And I was like, oh God, what have I done? Poor fairies, totally. So I was just thinking, like, I can't choose my alignment in this game. Like, I like RPGs. I play RPGs in many formats, so that's why I really like the idea of this as well. But yeah, it's quite extensive. So yeah, you can level up. They'll send you a nice sticker when you get enough XP. I have another example. I went on the foray. Here again, the language, by the way. Feeling an unsatisfiable lust for violence, you set off to the nearest village. Again, like, pretty violent. Okay, but here's the first kind of multiplayer feature. So I get a message that next to the village, I spotted a knight. And let's hope he won't see you. And then the last message on the middle. So this knight to him was completely clueless. Village was successfully pillaged. You feel pleased about yourself. So this other player didn't basically react in time, and I got to pillage the village. And I was too lazy and too slow as well. I got these messages as well to my chat, like, you were strolling around on your horse when you noticed Kuakamele of Deerhorn Castle trying to pillage a local village. To stop him, click go. And because I didn't click go on time, you let this person go and he pillaged the village. We hope you feel terrible. So I was feeling bad, you know, our poor village got pillaged. But this is nice. Like, you have an actual person whose gameplay you can affect here. And then the kind of real multiplayer though comes from the castles. So I'm part of the Wolfpack Castle, and there's a castle chat where the members of this particular castle can chat together. And then you can choose to either defend your own castle, or you can choose to attack a certain specific castle. And these battles happen like every 4 hours currently. And then in this chat wars community group, you will hear the reports on how the different castles did. Of course, I took a screenshot of the one where we did very well. So Wolfpack Castle was good here. Yeah, and then there's in this chat there's actually quite a bit of conversation, like people may be commenting on the results and how well they did. So clearly a good use of the multiplayer. Not very extensive on the graphical side. Like, there's no HTML5 screens. There's only like some, what was that, like a level up sticker. But for some games that can even be enough. And it had quite a lot of functions. Actually, I think this game is in beta. They were like saying somewhere that they will launch soon. I don't know what it means for them to launch. It's there. It seems to be quite playable in beta already. Okay. Then few words on our own game. Now a lot of expectation build. Okay, what is it? Best and Bester. It's actually a cooperation between a Finnish TV animation studio called Gigglebug Entertainment. So they are building a TV animation with the same name, and it has also these two characters, Best and Bester, who are actually just the faces, and they are taking these different shapes, and they are comparing like illogical things together, and they're trying to find out what is the best thing to be in this world. Actually, they're trying to find out what is their final form, like what will they become. So in the game also, these are still in development screenshots. There's 3 game modes, and I'll explain them shortly. So the first one is kind of the daily tournament, where you have some funny question or silly question. Well, this is just which is the bestest bet, and then you have to decide on what would you have as a bet, rather a donut or a Hawaiian shirt. Well, depends on the person, but it's up to you. Although the question might be, what would you have on a deserted island, or what would be raining from the sky, or all kinds of stuff. And that's kind of the daily tournament where you can tell your own opinions and see what your friends think about it as well, and kind of compare the results. Then the second game mode is this guessing marathon, where you then have a competition on guessing what others have voted globally. So here, which is the bestest to dream about? Do you think generally people would rather dream about dolphins or mustache? I would think dolphins. At least personally, I think dolphins. So I think I would click the dolphin and then hopefully get some points. Then once you play these 2 modes, you kind of start to accumulate your collection of these bodies. And you can create your own polls from your collection. So you can select the opponents, and you can type your question, whatever, like, how do you feel today? Fish or campfire? Are you on fire? Are you more like a fish today? And then you can share this poll, and this is always a voluntary share. So you can choose to share these polls to your friends to kind of get their views on, okay, what's happening. And this is user-generated content. As far as we know, it's the first user-generated content we've seen in Messenger. So that's kind of one angle to look at it. Yeah, that's the basic game modes. There are a few other things, but let's leave something for the launch when that happens. Hopefully soft launching quite soon. All right, some more questions that were given to me before the talk. I hope I have answered a few of these already by now. First of all, why do this? What is the main point for the instant chat games? Is it just a way of extended availability? What are benefits comparing to other mobile games? Is there any difference players than just access, or is there any new value for them? So yes, some of the key points are mentioned here, like the availability. That is also a value for the player. If you don't have to download a game and you still want to enjoy a quick game, you can do it without the downloading. What are the benefits? Well, I went through those main points of having the kind of instant clans there, like the community features available, the messaging, and overall the kind of multiplayer environment, the social environment. And I like to think that the games can give other value than just being easy to access. I mean, games generally should give some value to the player. They should be a form of entertainment. Sometimes even you learn new things from them. Maybe you meet new friends through them. That's actually for the next question already. Next question was for who? Who is average player of chat application games? In how big groups do people usually play chat games, or does it depend on the game? Can you meet new people through these games? For the last one, yes, you can. Even in the examples, like in that Telegram chat wars game, you can meet new members of your same castle, and then you can start chatting with them. Even in Everring, if you have a group where you specifically play the Everring game, you invite your friends there to play together. maybe they will invite their friends, so you meet your friends' friends. So kind of the groups can grow beyond your immediate close friends quite easily if some people start to get together to play these games. And how big groups? So that really, it depends on the game. Some games are better in one-to-one conversation. Some work better in bigger groups. How I like to see it is that the game would be playable alone, but there's something that you get more, or it enhances the play if you play it with friends. And I think I covered the average player. It's any chat app user, and that's a lot. So you can target subsections there as well if you like. Privacy and irritation. Yeah, there was a lot about this, and we've already covered some of this. The first one is in Finnish, but so how do the games in Facebook prevent you from feeling that they are just spamming themselves for your friends? Or is the typical Facebook user already so used to this news of privacy that it's okay because it's so used to it? And are there any other revenue models than free to play, pay to win? So how can the games prevent the feeling? The only way I know is just like designing the messages in a clever way. One thing that was happening in our Everwing group, for example, is that in the early days of Everwing, whenever somebody managed to kill the group boss, they would come this window that, hey, now claim your loot. So what the player would always do is like take a screenshot of that screen and then send the screenshot to the group that, hey, now others see this, go and claim your treasure, because everyone in the group had to go and claim the treasure. So then now, since then, Everwing has implemented a message that whenever somebody kills the boss, there's an automatic message to the group like, okay, now everyone can click here and go and claim their loot. So for that group, for that purpose, that was actually a good message, because we were kind of manually doing it. We were manually sending screenshots like, hey, now there's a loot to be had. So that's a good message from the game, and there's something like people want to receive it. And I'm sure there are some that are more spammy and more annoying ways to use it as well. And I don't think everyone's like totally, used to this so much that it wouldn't matter. I think it matters a lot how you design your messages, and you really have to pay attention to it. The revenue model is free to play. I don't think there will be any paid games inside the chats, with the exception of iMessage. That's the only one where there's like paid apps as well. Maybe it comes to some chat app. For now, I would see it's going to be free to play, and that has been a controversial issue as well on how good is that to the player. But I can see it also being a good thing that you can try the game for free and you can play quite a lot for free before deciding if you want to support the game or if you need to buy something in the game. Okay, what's the next one? Everwing seems to rely a lot on people inviting their friends to play the game. In my circles, game invites updates seem to mostly be a source of accidental embarrassment. Is this a problem? Does it vary between demographics, and how are you taking it into account while designing games for chat applications? I guess the new question here now is that does it vary between demographics? I'm sure it does. Like if you have groups or audiences that are kind of gamers or who feel more for the like let's play games and accept that, then they would be an easier target to send these messages to. So in that sense, it's good if you can see inside the game like who of your friends are playing the same game, so they would be most likely more easier to kind of accept or even want to have messages relating to that game. Okay, so best mechanics. Okay, so again about the invites, but why do they work so well? What is the single most important aspect for the chat game to work? Why do they work so well? So if you think about games and game development in general, one of the biggest problems for like indie game developers right now is the discoverability. Like in App Store, there's hundreds of games coming there daily. And how do you get noticed? It's very expensive to buy your users. The prices for getting users is getting higher and higher all the time. And then that kind of leads to a situation where the top earners of the charge are not moving very much. It's very hard to get in there if you don't already have the money to spend to get in there. So in that sense, this is like having any kind of way to get the game found by new people, other than paying a lot of money, is very useful for the kind of, especially like indies or game developers who have some good games, but it's hard to get the people to know about them. So this kind of mechanics, they do work. But that being said, there is some responsibility on the developers to not to overuse it, or people will, dump the game totally. They will get too annoyed by it. What is the single most important aspect for a chat game to work? It's hard to say like one thing. The messaging in some form has to be there for it to make sense that it is in a chat. Also, something to utilize the multiplayer, I would say, is good, that it makes it possible to be a kind of a hit game in the environment. Overall, just like being mindful of the platform and how it works, and being mindful of the people's thinking and how are they interacting there when they are already there. You are coming to a place where there's already some things happening, and then you should kind of adapt to that. Do chat games need to always be streamlined and intuitive? Will chat games replace mobile games in the long run? What is the best chat game mechanic that utilizes the chat app users' chat data? Is there any? Would it even be a good idea? Okay, so few of here. Do chat games need to be always streamlined and intuitive? In the beginning, yes. As I was saying, like, because you get into the game so fast, the beginning has to be very streamlined. You have to understand it very quickly. Will chat games replace mobile games? To some genres and some types of games, I think so, yes. I mean, that's something that is kind of the trend, that you don't have so many apps, and having these apps that collect different activities together is actually very useful for the user and the player. But some types of games will not be a fit. Like, I think I mentioned esports earlier. That's a difficult genre. I mean, a lot of like if you have a lot of technical requirements for the game, it's a very large game. I mean, there are some games that will be better on their own apps, certainly. But then there are some genres that may adapt or may be born. I mean, I'm looking for new genres to be born as well on this platform. That's what usually happens with new platforms. So then certain types of games would be played only in chat in the future. And for utilizing the chat app users' chat data, I guess those bot games that I showed in Kik and Telegram, they were kind of using the chat data in a way that, if you type to it in the chat, it can see all that, it can try to reply to that intelligently. So what comes to the kind of personal data, like the user data, the platforms are quite careful with that. They wouldn't allow the games to kind of go and just pillage around the user's data. So that's not something that the games can even do. Oops. So the last question, that's quite a big question, how to get into developing messenger games. So I haven't been talking much about the kind of technical aspect. I mean, the process and the team and what you need to get started is pretty similar to starting to do any game. You need to have programming, you need to have some art created and all that, like a game team doing it. Technically, of course, you need to adapt to the available APIs. You need to do it on HTML5. For example, for Kik and Telegram, you could start right away. There are APIs available for them openly. So, in that sense, it's not a problem. For Facebook Messenger, currently it's restricted. So you would have to approach Facebook to be part of their kind of partner program. But I'm personally just assuming that that's going to change at some point as well. So it's not that difficult to get into it. You will need to adapt also your kind of tools that you use and your pipeline and what kind of backend you build, a little bit based on the kind of platform and the APIs that it offers. Of course, with the platforms that are using HTML5, I wouldn't say it's a huge issue. Then you could port your game possibly to several of these platforms. That's something to consider if you decide to do this. Of course, right now, what's kind of I guess has been one aspect of why it hasn't been growing up even faster yet has been the monetization questions. But I can see those are starting to get cracked as well on how they will work. Certainly, as a kind of a if you want to do a non-profit project, that's very easy. Just go ahead and do it, and you'll have a game running there. For the monetization, some of these platforms are still developing them. All right. Oh yes, I had one more summary slide. Okay, just the 4 points that I mentioned. What is chat as a platform? What do you take into account when you develop games? You have to consider the natural multiplayer environment. How do you interact with the other players? Why is the game in chat? Why not the App Store? You have the instant clan and community building that you can benefit from. There's the frictionless discovery and move to the game. And does that imply something for the game design as well? And then the messaging and notification interfaces that are built in. And how do you use that? Do you have a companion bot? What kind of messages? Where do you share and what do you share? And why would people share? Why would they want to share? Trying to think it from the user's perspective as well. So chat is its own ecosystem for social games. I think that's it. The end. Thank you. Yeah, and there's some time if there's any questions.
Yeah. Okay, now it works. All right, thank you, Elina, so much for your lecture. It was super interesting to get a glimpse of this new trend. I have one question before we go to the audience questions, is that I am a little bit confused about the bot things and then the games within the apps and so on and so forth. So could you elaborate a little bit of what bot actually means in chat application games?
Yes, so bots are like little artificial users. So bots can join a chat group or you can have one-on-one chat with the bot. That's what it's been meaning kind of in the IRC days and early on there has been bots around for a long time. How the different platforms are regarding them it varies a little bit. Like in Facebook Messenger, for example, the instant games is a separate thing. An instant game is not a bot. It's an instant game, which can have a bot to accompany it. So yeah, it gets a bit bit tricky. It can have a bot related to the game that then can send messages as well. Then Kik and Telegram, for example, they they play the games through the bots only. So the game is the bot. It kind of equals. It's an equal. So yeah, it depends a bit on the platform. How the bot and game are related, but bot is always a kind of an artificial person.
Thank you for clarifying that. It's a really new area, so I hope that for people that are not that technically kind of historically aware of the bots as well from the chat applications of the 80s, like IRC, that maybe that kind of streamlines the then later to the kind of lingo of those games, because now I don't know if everybody understands, for instance, what is bot.
And bots are used for many other things than games as well. Like there's a lot of companies using bots nowadays for kind of customer service.
Right.
So you can discuss with the company. They have the FAQ in a format where you talk to a bot and the bot will reply back to you, and a lot of interactions happen. Oh, you can do purchases even. You can order something via bot. So that's a business model as well.
Yeah. Okay, so that's out of the kind of my bag. So feel free to ask any questions. I have a couple from the chat as well. Lasse is going to give you the mic.
Yeah. Thank you for the talk. I have a question about specifically monetization, because as you describe it, I think like the platform actually when the games are actually taking advantage of the platform, they are not very good at monetization, and the game which actually are good at monetization are not really taking advantage of the platform like that ever playing whatever game. So my question is like, do you think, or what is your standpoint on this? Like,
well, I do think actually Everwing is taking the platform into account quite well. So I wouldn't say it's not. I mean, it has quite a bit of multiplayer features inside. So my assumption, I mean, some of the like how well the games monetize and what are the best monetizing games. There's not much data available on that yet because it's also new. So I can't say any fact on what games are best monetizing. It's the data isn't out there. But my guess would be that the ones that utilize the platform best have the best retention, and best retention always reflects back to the monetization. It's been studied that in any entertainment, whether it be TV, movies, or games, the more time you spend with it, the more you are ready to pay for it. So always good retention and good user numbers, of course, that always translates to monetization as well.
Okay, I have one more question about because it really reminds me this like a huge bubble with Facebook games, where basically when Facebook implemented those games, there was like a huge surge in like users and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden it just burst, and I haven't seen like anyone playing Facebook games anymore. So do you think this might actually happen to the Messenger as well? Because it very much look like that there is not much of a possibilities regarding, for example, the monetization, that the games can be only like free to play.
Well, yeah, they will be free to play, but they will have monetization. It seems that Facebook Messenger is kind of leading the way there as well, already having some of those ads available and talking about the in-apps in Google Play. So yeah, what comes to the kind of comparison with Facebook, Facebook, okay, you can call it a bubble, but it did last quite a while, and some big companies were born from that time. For example, Tjunga is still very much around, and they were one of the big winners on the Facebook game era. And you're correct that it was much more popular at the time, and then it was actually Facebook itself that kind of changed the rules of the platform a little bit, and that also affected a lot on the decline in the popularity. And then Facebook has been more targeting things like, you log into your games via Facebook, and the game is not necessarily in Facebook. But what makes me think that this will work out a little bit differently is that it's Facebook again doing it, and I do kind of sense good intentions from them on how they want to build the game platform. So yeah, I mean, of course, I can't say how exactly it will happen, but just looking at the kind of trends of where the chat apps are going and how well the technologies are starting to develop and integrate those experiences, I think it can be beneficial enough for the games and the players to coexist there that it's quite lasting. But we shall see.
Maybe to back up Elina's comment about Zynga is that in the best years of Facebook games, Zynga was the second biggest seller on PayPal. So it's not really, if it was a bubble, it was quite long in terms of the game industry time, and also it was really profitable bubble, and they're still on. So yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of things that can also come up, like there's different consoles or different things that happen for a period of time, and then things evolve and they change into something else. Yeah.
Do we have more questions?
Hi, and thanks for the talk. Many mobile games are developed with game development platforms like Unity. So from a development perspective, how do you see them fitting or adapting into this new picture in the future?
Game engines, the kind of de facto ones like Unity, I believe they may adapt, but they have some adapting to do. Right now, the HTML5 games, I mean, there's quite a, for example, the loading time for the game has to be very quick, so you can't have a very heavy engine if it makes the loadings too slow or the package is too big. So what I would recommend is some very lightweight HTML5 engines, or there's some like we are using Pixie for animations, for example, Pixie animation engine. So there are some tools you can use, but yeah, you have to be careful what you choose as well. So it's kind of enough lightweight.
More questions? Well, at least before we go to your question, I have a question from the chat during the live stream. So Eli Abraham wanted to know that, or said that he didn't even know that Telegram has game bots. So how do you actually find these? Like we already talked about, it's a little bit perhaps difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult. So the one you can start with is called just GameBot. You just make the @ sign and then GameBot in the chat, and it'll show you. There's one bot from Game that has quite many games. It's funny that Telegram, I didn't find a page under Telegram website that would have listed them, but there are other sites that kind of make collections of them. So just Googling is actually the best. Like just ask Google Telegram games, and it'll tell you.
What do you think? Why it is still so? Is it still so early that they don't, they haven't caught up with the advertising of their content within the chat application?
Well, Telegram is an interesting app, because what they are saying on their side is like that it's a free app, and they will never kind of make you pay for the app itself in any way. And I don't know if that's gonna how they will look at the game's perspective. So. It has been looking more like a non-profit thing, and then that gives a different. I don't. It's hard to know exactly what they think. Why don't they create a discovery page? Maybe creating a discovery page would also be a lot of effort for them, like how to create that, or how to create the algorithms on actually finding the stuff. You don't want to have some explicit games happening there. When they keep it outside, kind of like almost like unofficial, they don't have a lot of the responsibility maybe on like being on top of the content. Or
Okay, thank you. And there was a question from the audience.
Yeah, is it working? Yeah. This was like, I think my question is mainly like very similar to the one you just read, because like it was very interesting subject, but somehow I have missed it. The last time I played what you'd call a chat application integrated game was like in Windows Live Messenger like 7 or 8 years ago. So is this these mobile chat app games, are they still somehow in their infancy that I haven't heard of them, or am I just some sort of statistical outlier? Because I feel like I'd be in like the prime target audience, but and in the 1.3 billion people with the Facebook Messenger app, but somehow I have never heard of these games before now.
Yeah, no, that's still a fairly usual situation that people haven't heard about them. It's like when I tell people that I do chat games, I often have to explain what it means. And even though like everyone has Messenger, and actually one of the 4 main buttons is called Games, not many people press that. It's like still they don't see it. Like if it's not part of your daily usage of the app, I mean this game button there, it just. And then when I point it out to people, like, see, there is the game. So, oh, I never saw it. So yeah, I think that's. I think what it's kind of looking for is having those hit games there that will really break the platform. I mean, for platform to become successful, it needs successful games in it, and that's yeah. It's always the content that will drive the platform as well.
More questions? Because I do have some again from the chat. So Jonne Harja wants to know how, related to this question perhaps, is that we are all wondering what happened, when did this kind of start? But how do you do user acquisition for chat application games? How does that work? For instance, in Facebook Messenger.
Well, I can't talk for other companies. We're starting with just having the visibility of the games listing, and then hoping for people to share. The games listing, though, currently, if you look at it, it has less than 100 games. So at least right now, competition is not fierce. How we're looking at it is we need to get the top position, and we need to have ways to keep ourselves there. Now that we have a good strategy in our mind, at least to how to do that. So. What comes to like user acquisition, as I said, in mobile games, like buying users is very expensive. So we will only look at that at a later point when we see what the kind of viral and other numbers for the games are looking like. And I would suspect that that's the case pretty much with everyone else. So I don't think like paid user acquisition into the apps is happening that much. Yeah, but I'm sure that's one way that it will develop in the future.
Yeah, maybe that also relates to, like, maybe we already got an answer for the question, why this platform for you exactly, and quick save games? So
yeah, we've been kind of at it for a while. I don't think there's many people who've been developing chat games for like 3 years specifically, because we're doing it at Valringo, and now we're doing it with quick save. So I don't know, for us the kind of social games and having chat somehow as part of the gameplay has been a thing all the time. Already at Tribe Studios, we were doing these games where you have chat in the game and you're chatting. So it's for us it's very natural. Like this is an area that we feel like we understand and we feel like we can contribute. And as I said, we want to do games that kind of enhance the communication. So we have kind of a big ambition on how can we make really, really good games there. But also personally, my whole story with computer science started in chat rooms. I don't know if you know the Kisafam chat rooms by any chance. I was there in like was it 90s something, late 90s. So I got into these worlds of like it was so. Then it was new even to chat with somebody, meet somebody online, make friends there, and somehow that has still carried over. But yeah, we feel that this is something that where we can contribute, and also that it has a great potential to become something very big. Yeah.
And I think some, for instance, Finnish game developers, they do utilize this kind of an early mover towards on the platform, as you said, that you're in the top 100 at least, right? Right in the beginning.
Yeah, well, supposed to get a game there, but yes, we will.
Yeah.
We will be in the top 100.
Yeah. So with different kinds of devices and new platforms, when they launch, it's quite. When we now talk about user acquisition and a kind of a very competitive field of getting players kind of into your game, to be early on the platform is really an advantage.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions from the audience?
I have one weirder one. So you said you have going to have a user generated content in your game. Are you prepared for the inevitable weird stuff that people will make with it and the abuse of it, or is it with their friends so it's not a big problem?
That's how we've decided to tackle. So because it's with their friends, it should be safe enough. Yeah, that's always what happens.
Okay. Yeah.
TTP or how you call it. Yeah.
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 All right. Maybe related question is that you said that there were a lot of questions about the spamminess of the games, and then you said a couple of times that if you cleverly design, and could you give us one way of cleverly designing the spam of the chat applications?
Well, of course, one key thing is that if you get people also voluntarily to share, that you don't just send the automatic messages, but you have share in a point where people actually click the share. That's kind of a win for you. And even though we talk a lot about the spamminess, then there's still people in the audience who have not heard about them, so they haven't been that spammy because it's not like a wildfire yet that they are even out there. So yeah.
I was also wondering what are the kind of the most if there's only 100 games in the Facebook Messenger right now, but can you we saw your examples, but are these representatives of the typical genres that are on the chat applications as games?
Currently, yes. So there are these little games that you play alone for the scores. There are these turn-based one-on-one games, and then there are games that have solo play, but then some multiplayer features. Of course, that's very wide category on what are those some multiplayer features, and I think there will be kind of genres forming up, but we haven't seen them kind of all yet.
Somebody in the chat said that maybe this is the kind of new beginning for text adventures, and I personally got interested of that too. So maybe it's one of the things that could happen. There's some text adventures also for smartwatches and things that don't have too much of the screen time, perhaps.
Yeah, so that's probably one genre. I mean, there's going to be several. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Okay, I have one last question, but if there's more from the audience. All right, so I'm super interested, do you already know, or how does it work, that how do you then get the statistics from your players? Is there the development tools will provide you understanding of all the metrics, or do you have to build them on your own? So how do you understand your players once your game is live?
Some platforms are providing tools for you. You could imagine, for example, Facebook providing some data. But then, of course, for all of these games, you can also have your own backend. So you can also store your own data on your servers. You can process that data. So you can build, or you can use some ready tools that are available. So yeah, there's a lot of options, and you should definitely be mindful of your numbers and that you get your statistics from the game.
Aside from your own tools and then the platform tools, are there the kind of the service providers that provide you kind of data services like App Annie or others? Are they already covering the chat application games?
I don't think App Annie is there yet. No, it's more tailored. So it's more like there are tools that you can take into use, but those tools wouldn't share that data to everyone else. So that's why it's one reason it's difficult to know how well the games are monetizing or how much users they. Well, actually, Facebook Messenger for the games that are in the latest stage, but you can see actually the number for some of the games. When you load the game, it shows how many millions of users it has or so. But that's there are not these kind of collection sites where you could go and get the full data yet.
So no graphs, for instance, on the...
No, not really. So yeah, maybe it'll come, like Apanis and things will be born. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Elina, for your talk and insight. Let's have another applause for the lecture. And as promised, I don't know if I promised that, but we do have coffee outside the lecture room, and Elina will be here for a little while to answer more of the questions that maybe you didn't want to ask on the stream. So feel free to go and grab a coffee and talk more.
Thanks for inviting me. It's great to get to more people to know about this platform, because the platform really needs even better games than's there. So,
so more developers as well are welcome. So use Elina's knowledge if you want to become a chat application game developer.
Yes.
And then we also have a small kind of experiment at the end of the session with our students. We're going to chat a little about the topics without Elina, actually. So we're just going to chat about it. And if you want to see that, it's going to be, again, in Facebook page on our Facebook as a Facebook Live. And you can also eavesdrop while you're there drinking coffee. So thank you, everybody. And next time will be in 2 weeks.